Welcome to Know What I Mean. My name's Oscar.
My name's George, and the quote I chose for this week is from David Allen, and it goes as follows. Your mind is for having ideas, not holding them.
So this week we talk about our transformational list making, clearing space for new ideas to come in, and me realizing that my memory is not as terrible as I'd once thought.
Now, if that's not intriguing, I don't know what is. Let's get into the show. I thought we were recording our little intro.
Missed all that stuff,
That
George.
absolute gold. Sweet.
I am ready when you are.
All right, lovely. Let's do it. The quote this week is, your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. And this is from David Allen, who wrote a book on productivity called Getting Things Done. And it's a book that I read quite a while ago, and it's actually had a really big impact on me. Even today, like I'm doing things differently today because of this quote and the things that I've learned from his system. The thing that really appealed to me about it was the core of this quote really is more of a philosophy and something that's not just limited to productivity. It's not like some sort of quick, cool way to get through your email inbox, special priority codes or these little tricks. It's a real philosophy, it feels like, because I think it sounds like quite an abstract quote when you first read it, but there are actually just some really practical steps that can help you follow this quote. So it's not just some like empty platitude. Essentially, what happens is when an idea pops into your head, it's often like a reminder that something's wrong in your life or something's not quite where it should be. It could be some little thing like I need to remember to take the recycling out on Thursday, or it could be something a bit bigger like finish editing the new YouTube video, or it could be something huge like end world hunger or reduce the amount of suffering in the world. These whole spectrum of things can pop into your consciousness. Your subconscious mind is kind of telling you this is not right. You need to do something about this, and it will keep reminding you of these things. The common way of dealing with them is to just, the idea pops up, you kind of have a little worry about it, and then just it just goes back into the vault, ready to resurface at another time. The solution for this is to decide what to do with your thoughts. So see them as like a little notification or something. If an idea pops into your head, the process that I try and go through as much as I can is thinking about, okay, is this something that I can change or something that I feel it's my responsibility to change? And if that's the case, then either I just need to do it now and get it out of the way, or I need to record it in a way that I trust, like write it down on a list that I feel like I know I'm going to get to it on time. For example, like with the recycling thing, it could just be you set an alarm on your phone for a certain time on Thursday called recycling. It's just as soon as that pops up, rather than just putting it back in the in basket, it's like you've got all these things that collect in your in basket. If you just take them out, have a look at them, go like, shit, I've got to do that as well, and then put it back, you haven't really accomplished anything. You're still in the same place and more stuff's going to keep piling up. So it's just this process of when you have an idea, you need to sort it out. You need to organize it so that you can let go of it and it won't just keep popping up. And the other option, if you can't change this thing, is you just accepting it, because often things can come up that you feel you're responsible for or things that are bad in the world and you feel like you should change. Say it's an insecurity that comes up, something about yourself that is not changeable. If it's like a physical characteristic that you're insecure about, and this is not like a one-time thing, but ideally you just practice the letting that go and just accepting that as it is, and just reminding your mind that that's not something that you can change and that's something that you're accepting. It's a simple process that you can go through when you have a thought that arises. It actually made me think of the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that really is the same process that I was just talking about. It's a very powerful thing to go through, and it can relieve a lot of stress, I find. interested to hear what your kind of initial thoughts were on the quote.
My friend Tom is going to be so annoyed at me because he loves that 𝗀𝗲ecie prayer, like prayer. I was going to say quote, but I guess it's like a prayer. So
yeah,
and I was going to bring it into another episode and I forgot. So and now you've said it. Well, it's been brought in, Tom. Yeah, I think. Well, I guess the thing that came up for me initially was this sense of the usual state being one of holding and one of trying to maintain and retain all of these bubbling ideas and thoughts that we have. And it's almost like we've got this system of constantly propping up, which is very stressful. It's a lot of weight. It's a big burden to be not having any system in place that we can either, as you say, like note something down to take action on, or actually deliberately let go of something. Could be to do with the negativity bias or assessing threat, but that we maybe feel like it's very important that we mentally holding on to all the possibilities and potential things that could go wrong and things that we need to do, because if we put them down, then we're maybe more at risk. Whereas if we're kind of holding up these things, it's almost like I'm imagining if you owned Google Glass, then you've got these things in your peripheral vision, all these notes that you've got that you carry around with you all the time, that you might feel more safe having these notes available that you're like constantly looking at. But in my experience, and I guess the reason why you found this process so powerful is that that doesn't work. It's very difficult to maintain and be happy when you're constantly trying to hold up all these ideas of things that you have to do in your life. An experience that I've been having recently is that my meditation practice has been you're not actually allowed to say that it's not going well. That's like against the rules, apparently. But I've been having so many ideas I think because of all these exciting projects and stuff that are going on, including this podcast. It's just been like bubbling up like constantly, these ideas. And I guess because of you mentioning about the quote for this week, it's really been on my mind in the last week to what's a good word, to allow that process of things bubbling up, because it is through, I'm feeling creative and just allowing that process to happen, where I'm allowing thoughts to bubble up, but then making sure to express them. And by express them, I mean put them down, like get them somewhere so I can free up that mental space for not only more ideas, but just allowing more space. Because I definitely go through periods when I'm more on top of this than other periods, but like I know that trying to hold on, it's just hard. It's just a lot of work,
Yeah, I actually wrote down a bit about that in my notes, how freeing up your RAM, which is the kind of the memory that you're using, or kind of, I guess, your conscious mind, freeing up that space means that you have more space for other ideas to come in. So I think it really does help to go through this process of getting ideas out there, because it really does leave more space for new ideas to come in. I often use the model of the conscious and subconscious mind to think about this sort of thing. It's really helpful to have a model for it, and it works really well for this type of thing. So you have your conscious awareness, which is like your just whatever you can pay attention to right now, whatever you're aware of. And then there's the subconscious part of you, which is like analyzing all of your sense data. And, say if there's a noise that could be a threat, it brings that to your attention, or it brings your attention things that are on your to-do list, or things that you haven't written down on your to-do list, or maybe something you've written down on a to-do list, but you haven't set a date, so you think you might forget about the to-do list. All of these things, they will just resurface from the subconscious mind into your conscious mind. That's the only way you can realize and clear your subconscious, is by processing these things so that it leaves space for other things to come up. So I see it as like a great opportunity whenever you become consciously aware of something, because that's something that's been in your subconscious maybe for a little while, but it's like, boom, now this is your chance. Now that it's in your conscious awareness, some ideas that you have, they don't come back. Sometimes you'll have a cool idea and you're sure you remember it and you won't. It's so important to capture those things and see it as kind of grace. Like when something comes up into your conscious mind, take that down, then it's out in somewhere you trust, somewhere that you're going to review. It's in the right place, or at least you've put it in somewhere where you're going to check it and review it later. And once you've done that, you leave more space for more ideas and more creativity to come through. And I think that's a really important process to go through, and like something that's so liberating. I feel so much better once I've done that, or as I'm doing that.
I've got to say, when you initially said this quote, I was thinking, what am I going to say about this?
Mm-hmm.
And I think listening to you now, it's like the reality is that we spend most of our life working with concepts and ideas and taking action on those ideas. That's such a huge portion of our day and our life is spent doing that. And it's something that needs to be taken seriously. Having a system in place that you not only trust, but that you actually enjoy, having an enjoyment of getting your ideas out, working them out and taking action on them. That's like a hugely significant thing to do that most people don't take all that seriously. With my work, then I'm writing stuff down constantly and processing notes constantly, because there isn't any other way. I'd become so stressed if I wasn't able to do that. It's really, really important that I have records of things. And it's one of those funny things that I think is quite unglamorous in a way. You could say on one level, we're talking about to-do lists, and ways of noting stuff down. But really, it's such a huge part of our lives. And it's something that everyone does on some level, but just you can be quite effective at it or very ineffective at it.
Yeah, I think everyone at some point, things get to where they just need to make a list. Before reading this, there would be times where it's like, right, I just need to write a to-do list and get this shit done, and I wasn't someone who would normally have to-do lists or write stuff down. I would kind of just go with what I was feeling like, or just I'd remember what things to do most of the time, and I would kind of just go through like that. But if there was something where, it was just really getting on top of me, I was like, right, I just need to write a to-do list. It would feel so much better. I'm sure everyone listening must have had that experience of being kind of overwhelmed and then being like, right, I need to sort this shit out. And then writing a list and at least having clarity in that one area of your life and feel like, okay, now I know where to go. And it feels so good to get it out and to get it organized. I think one thing that can be overlooked is the subconscious. You can't really access it. You can't just be like, okay, what are all the things I need to do? They won't instantly surface. Your subconscious sends messages to your conscious. So often it will be thoughts of things to do, but a lot of its communication is actually not verbal at all. It's feelings. And if you imagine your subconscious is full of all these things that it feels like you should be doing, because it doesn't have a concept of past and future and when to do things. If you've written down something, if it knows you're supposed to do something, it thinks you're supposed to be doing that 24/7. It thinks that it needs to keep reminding you about that thing. So just imagine your subconscious was filled with all these different things that you're supposed to do that you haven't really sorted out. That gets transmitted as a feeling. So you can have this feeling of there being lots of shit that you haven't sorted out, but it's not even verbalized or clear. And through knowing that and realizing how liberating it is to just sort through those things, the process of keeping your subconscious mind kind of clean and tidy, as you do it and as you start to physically feel better, it's not just about, getting the things written down on a list or the physically doing the things. Like, it's really about you're clearing up that part of you so that you don't just have your subconscious mind giving you this bad feeling that you've missed something or that you should be doing something else. That's a feeling that I've had plenty in my life, and definitely one that I don't enjoy. So it's nice to keep that part of your mind organized. I just feel so much better when I do it. Very liberating thing to do.
Had it, I guess, with that feeling side of things has been coming up a lot in lockdown, I think, because there's a funny setup, which is that there's a lot of needs that aren't being met by how limited we are with what we can do in terms of our actions. And I don't think anyone's all that familiar with the effects of being in all the time and not being able to socialize with other people and getting out of the house and things. It's not something that I'm very conscious of. It's all happening quite subconsciously. And one thing that happened the other day in regards to that was that I was feeling quite unsettled and constricted by all this stuff going on. And through a conversation, it became clear that that was the case. And what I needed to do was actually broaden my life out. Like, my life had become very narrow. And I guess in the same way as you might be writing down lists and things, you can also discuss things. You can get it out through discussion and conversation with friends. And in this case, it was like a conversation with a friend where through that expression, it became clear to me, it was my subconscious bringing stuff up within that conversation, that then it was like, okay, you need to take action on how locked in you've been. And that was what resulted in me contacting you about going on a bike ride. Me and George went on I don't know, it's like 4 hours, 3.5 hours bike ride the other day. And
so cold as well.
Yeah, freezing hands.
Dodging pedestrians.
I spent most of the time with only one hand on the handlebars, because I was just like flapping my other hand trying to warm it up. But anyway, but this process of making sure that you have a means of expression for your unconscious that you can either articulate or get it down so it becomes more obvious, you've marked it in some way, can then lead to like actions that you wouldn't have anticipated. Part of the reason why I wanted to go and bike so far out was just this sense of constriction felt very small, and the opposite to that was, let's just get as far out of Brighton on a bike as possible. And that was quite a creative solution to my experience of smallness in my house. But it wouldn't have happened unless there was a means of me having that conversation and expressing and allowing my subconscious to bring up ideas.
Yeah, because it's giving it the space. Like I was saying, it's kind of is grace when those things come from your subconscious to your conscious. And a great way to do that is, well, one of the things we discussed obviously is clearing space for it by organizing your other thoughts. So you're not just filling up your conscious with thoughts that you've already had 10 times that day. And also, yeah, by having a conversation, some new type of stimulation, and also meditating. If you're quieting your mind, things are going to pop in. That's kind of that's the fun part. That's the fun of meditation. There's definitely lots of things that you can do to help things surface. And I think it's just such a valuable process. It's very easy to become scared of your subconscious. I think a lot of people are, at least subconsciously. And I've definitely had points where in my life, I noticed myself just distracting myself. Say if I'd get home, then straight away watching something or listening something while I'm eating, while I'm doing other things. And just the constant stimulation, that stops things coming from your subconscious to your conscious. And that's a really common thing that I've done and that a lot of people do to deal with worrisome thoughts, feelings that, oh, I need to get this done, I need to do that, or maybe it's even bigger things about where they are in their life or things they're disappointed about or things that they just don't want to deal with. Those can come up. But one way of dealing with that is just to overwhelm yourself with stimulus. There's only a certain amount that your conscious can hold. So if you just fill it with watching something whilst you're eating food, there's no space for anything to pop in. Whereas if you're just still and you try and quiet your mind, then there's plenty of space for things to pop in. Or even if you just go on a walk, that's one of my favorite habits that I have now is just every morning I go for a walk, just like a 5-minute walk around the block, and it kind of just gets me ready for the day. Quite often I'll have different ideas. Usually I'll try and write them down rather than just get distracted and focus on that thing and forget about all the other things I'm supposed to do. It's great to leave that space for those ideas and give it opportunity for them to come through.
Yeah, I like the idea that there's multiple ways of, well, I suppose the area that we've ended up going into here is what are effective means of capturing and expressing the ideas that do come up in the best, most healthy way. And I like that there are lots of ways of doing that, and that there is a similar thread of, like, it is very liberating to express these things. You feel a lot lighter. Like, I have done the getting things done process, which is it takes a few days of, like, few whole days to do, and noting down absolutely every possible thing that you could project, various things you need to do, looking at lots and lots of objects in your house, thinking of if you need to take action on any one of those things, and basically just purging yourself of all these these little niggles that you've held on to that create a very burdensome experience. And it is like floating afterwards. It's really quite amazing. Because I'm not doing that process at the moment, but something that feels very recent to me is through this podcast. Well, both me and you, I guess, have been more interested in storytelling, and part of the process of storytelling is having stories to tell. So there's a book that I've been listening to called 𝗢𝗀𝗿. You remember the author's name?
I feel like it had the word dick in it.
Oh yeah,
that's all.
If you just look up dick on the internet, then you'll find it. From this book, 𝗢𝗀𝗿, it essentially says that there's an infinite amount of stories, because you're having moments, 5-second moments of realization, even if they're very small, many, many times a day, every day of your life. So you've got almost infinite stories to tell, but it's just about capturing those stories. And we hold on to them somewhere in our subconscious, with all of these experiences that build our lives. And there's a technique called crash and burn. So the process is that you start off with some arbitrary, maybe a color. So you just say red, green, blue. As soon as a memory is triggered by that color, then you start to write out that particular memory. So you might say green, and then you might think of trees, and then you might think of a story related to trees, like just a memory. It doesn't have to be anything like big, but the idea is that you just don't stop writing. And as soon as a new memory comes in that is triggered by the thing that you're writing currently, you do a little slash on the page, and then you go straight onto that new memory. So the idea is you're going from one story to another without stopping at all, and not being precious, not holding on to the previous story that you are writing out. And through this process, it's so interesting, because I consider myself as someone with a really bad memory, but through spending 15 minutes doing this process of just constant writing and jotting down memories, and not getting attached to each one I'm jotting down, and allowing new ones to pop up whenever they want to, I've just filled pages and pages and pages and pages of stories and memories from my childhood, mainly when I've been doing it. Stuff that I haven't thought about in literally years, but is sitting somewhere. Obviously, if I'm able to recall it, it's sitting somewhere. It's had an imprint on me. And there's really good stuff in there, like stories I've already told on the podcast, and stories that I'm now writing about and I want to tell on future episodes when they're more ready. But just through this process of just like free writing and allowing these memories to come up, there's just so much value just coming out from that I assumed wasn't there, because I've always labeled myself as having a bad memory. So
I wonder what other labels you've put on yourself that you're going to find aren't true in 2021.
Yeah.
While you're having a think about that, another thing I thought about was how your conscious mind doesn't actually have a way to hold on to ideas. You can repeat it in your conscious mind, but you don't hold it. It's not like stored there. It's like a screen that things can appear on, but they're not stored there. So the things are stored, I suppose, in your subconscious mind, and it will kind of keep reminding you of it into your conscious. And that's kind of that sentence totally trailed off. Do you do any more of any things based on the getting things done? Have any of those things influence your thinking on this?
Well, part of getting things done, which I think is a really golden nugget of it, is that it talks about action in a way that is much more effective than the usual way that we think of it. So the usual way is writing down a note of must sort my books out or something, you know? So it's a very, very general, very broad thing that is, you can sense is making you tense because you're not dealing with it.
Yeah.
But you're not actually refining what that means. So in getting things done, then it talks about how you need to set actions that are actual actions, and it gets very specific with that. Literally, what is the absolute next step that you need to do is very different to the usual way that we write to-do lists and notes. And I just think that's one of those bits of information that is just very helpful. So I think, for example, if I was going to make food, I wouldn't just write down make dinner, because I don't know what I'm going to make necessarily. So maybe I'd write down look up recipe for dinner if I was unsure about it, would be a specific action. Or ask my parents if they wanted to eat together would be a specific action that I could actually take. Like, what is the next step that I can actually take, as opposed to something a lot broader. And I think just trying that it feels significantly different, and that has definitely stuck with me as being the most effective way of writing things down. Is what is the actual next thing I can do?
Yeah, because otherwise it still stays in your mind, because it's not properly sorted. Even though you've written it down, you still haven't clarified it. So there's still part of your unconscious mind saying, I don't actually know what I'm doing here, or I don't actually know what to do next.
Yeah.
If it's something that's 2 minutes or less, you just do it straight away, because there's no point filing it away and then doing it. Like, if there's something that's quick to do and you think of that takes a couple of minutes, just do it and just get it done. It's much quicker than having to write it down on a list and then remember to do it later. If I've got something where, say I need to book an appointment at the dentist at a certain date, I'll set a reminder to remind me in 6 months to call the dentist, and the note has the phone number of the dentist. In 6 months' time, when that pops up, I click on the number and it calls the dentist. It seems like a small thing, but that clarity of when you have an idea, just organizing it where it needs to go, so you know, do I need to take action on this? If I need to take action, what is the action? Or do I need to just accept this? But just having that clarity is just incredibly liberating.
Yeah. And I remember a project that I was working on at uni, which was, it was activist related, and it was essentially, I had a very tight schedule, a really, really small amount of time to do it before I was going to go and get on a plane and go somewhere else, right? So it was starting to really push into my awareness as being this looming thing that I didn't actually have I knew that I had to do this project, and I had a vague idea of the direction I wanted to go in, but it was just amorphous blob of like anxiety. I was sat, I think, actually on the coach or something like that, and felt inspired to work this system of writing down specific steps. And I managed to just completely sort a step-by-step of exact next actions that I had to do, to the point where by the time I got back, I managed to get the entire thing done, and the project ended up doing like really, really well, even though I had a tiny amount of time. And it was just such an amazing process, actually, of how stress-free it was to just literally have like, this is like one foot in front of another, and this is the exact route that I need to go on to get to this end point. And I can't say that I've done that a ton. I feel like that was some sort of divine intervention, like God was encouraging me to do getting things done. I don't know why, but it was an amazing experience of doing that. And the project ended up getting like an award and stuff. And I think that was basically because of sorting out that system and working out next steps. It was really quite amazing.
Well, that seems like an inspirational place to leave it. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want a few more awards in their life?
Yeah, you can see it on my website, 𝗚𝗲cie𝗿𝗲𝗿.com.
All right, before you read out next week's quote, we'd just like to say thank you guys for watching. And yeah, if this episode made you think of anyone, someone you think would enjoy it, then please share it with them. That's kind of how we can grow this, and subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to it. Also, we've got a coffee, which is a place where you can donate, buy us a coffee or two if you feel like sponsoring the podcast. And thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. So yeah, Oscar, what's the quote for next week?
Okay. Although many of us think of ourselves as thinking creatures that feel, biologically, we are feeling creatures that think.
Love
so
that.
That's, yeah,
Donna Tartt?
that's good. No, it's not. Not 2 weeks in a row. But it's this is by 𝗢𝗲𝗿 from her book My Stroke of Insight, and you can check out a video by her called My Stroke of Insight, which is a TED Talk, which I highly recommend.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good ponder, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Peace.